Yeah. And I think for me as well, I remember I had a full-time job once, production kind of thing. And there was this whole process where I'd been approved leave and I was meant to go overseas traveling with my friend, and I was going to visit my sick grandma. It's like a movie. And it was approved and I was going to go, and I booked the trip, and then I got a new boss, and the boss said, no, sorry, you can't have that leave anymore. And I was just baffled. And I was like, but you can't, but I'm approved, I want to go. And I didn't go, and I couldn't go, and I never said goodbye to my grandma. And that was, it was painful and it was hard. And I think that was the last full-time job that I ever had, because I said, I want to live life on my terms.
Welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Awesome. So, Scott, I read something that you wrote on your social media that really resonated with me. And you said, working as an entrepreneur and in the media, people think that you are always confident, but I've had to break limiting beliefs and face fears over the years. So I would love to know, over the years, what has been a significant limiting belief that you've broken in your entrepreneurial and media journey?
Well, that's a really good question. And you've definitely gone deep there. That's great. I can't remember when I said that, but it's so true. Over the years, there's been so many times where, it looks like you've got it all together, and social media, obviously people talk a lot about the polished image and all of that kind of stuff. And it's the same with TV, doing live TV for a long time. I remember when I first started TV hosting, I just finished uni, and I would get my friend to bring his little camera, and we'd just go and film piece the cameras in different situations just to kind of get used to it. And so, over time, you just get more confident from doing it more. And then live TV, you're absolutely shitting yourself beforehand, and then you do it, and it's like a rush. And it's the same with business and speaking and then adventurous things, bungee jumping. And every time you get to a new level, there's another set of fears and another set of things to overcome and to push through. And I think that's how you know that you're growing and achieving. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that. And with business, backing yourself, I think a limiting belief for me would be I think it is that, I deserve this, I can do this, I have the skills and the talent and the self-belief that I can do it. I think, younger growing up, it's almost that imposter syndrome, especially with, you're doing these big business events with the Mark Borises and all these experts, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, should I be here? And I think over time, you realize and you unpack that and realize, yes, I should be here. And I do have the skills and the ability and just, really growing into that and backing yourself, I think, is a big one.
Yeah, I heard a story that Oprah shared, and she was talking about like a lot of her sort of like A-grade guests that we would all know, like superstars, for example. After every show, like with no hesitation, they would come up to her and be like, was that okay? Like, did I do good? Was that okay? And it really like humanized the situation. And I've seen you, in different forms of media. You certainly have been in the space of people that most of us look up to. Do you find that even within these people that you may feel like an imposter around, that they sort of experience their own sense of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think everyone has that element of, self-doubt. I also do a lot of directing through my production company. So I'm seeing that side behind the camera or between the takes with people. And even I directed Jason Momoa once on a shoot in LA. And I remember exactly that. He was, oh, bro, was that good? Like, is that all right? I mean, I kind of said this, like, should we do it again? And I think that's just a natural, and it's funny, even in the video, they kept some of the outtakes, but the amount of times he stuffed it up, I was like, what is going on here? It's a very simple line, get it together. But I think, definitely you realize that everyone has no one's perfect. And I think that's a beautiful thing as well, but everyone has their self-doubts and it's a part of the process of developing your skills and your self-confidence and putting yourself out there and saying yes to opportunities. I think the most scary thing is the idea of saying no to an opportunity because you don't think you could do it, or you do doubt yourself, or you don't back yourself. So I think it's really important to yeah, to address and unpack that. And I've definitely seen it over the years with all different people that I've worked with in all different situations.
And has there been an opportunity that you've had in your life that you've said no because of that fear, or have you had the tendency to say yes and sort of learn with that experience?
I would say one of the reasons I've had the successes I have in my life is because even if I'm sitting there like, I can't do this, there's no way. I can't speak in front of this many people. I don't want to do it, but I still do it. And I say yes, and I just drag myself there, and I show up and I make it happen. And I've always felt, it's like this morning I went for a swim at the beach and it was freezing cold, and this girl leans over and she's like, oh, it's a bit cold. I want to go in, but it's freezing. I'm like, you never regret a swim or a workout. And it's so the same with saying yes to an opportunity. You never, as much as beforehand, you might think, oh, maybe I'm not ready. Maybe this, just do it and make it happen and learn as you go. And that's not to say, I know there's the Richard Branson quote of, what does it say? Yes to the opportunity and then learn how to do it later. Like I think you should definitely still learn and put in the effort and become good at it, because I've had experiences where people have said to me, oh yeah, I can do that. I had a camera guy and I brought him along to China and he's like, yeah, I can do that. And it turns out he didn't know how to turn a camera on, but he was just like, let's go. So it's not great. So learn the skill as well and, put in the work. But maybe sometimes I think as well, that's the motivation to get the skill set is, you say yes to the thing, you've got it approaching, so then you just really hustle to improve and develop. And I think that's sometimes a tool as well that you can use.
And in being able to say yes to these things, obviously, as you're saying, with the skill set, but also, I guess, growing your own self-confidence through these, it's quite like the warrior mindset. Have you experienced in your life like any form of fatigue or overworking from sort of being more of that yes-orientated person?
I think so. Yeah, it definitely comes from that. Even it is that warrior mindset, martial arts. My whole background's in martial arts and Muay Thai. And I remember even I started when I was 15, 16, and I would have to spar these like big men. And yeah, I mean, I would just throw myself into it. It wouldn't always turn out well. I think to an extent, I have learned that side of it as well, in terms of there's been times when I've taken on too much. And I think the skill then, it's like the expert level of that next stage is actually learning when to say no, or when to delegate, or when to refer it to someone else. And just getting really authentic. For me, there's been opportunities. I've started businesses that I've just thought, you know what? This could be great, and this, is making money, but it's just not aligned with what I want to do. It doesn't link with my long-term vision, so I've let it go. And I think, yeah, it is almost a superpower, being able to realize what to turn down, what to say no to, and having that awareness. I think, yeah, it is awareness, because it's not about just being a yes man and saying yes to everything. It's saying yes intelligently, but having the confidence to say yes when it is correct, and when it does align with your mission and with your purpose and with your values and with your long-term goals and all of that kind of stuff. Or sometimes you don't need to overthink it, but it just feels right, and go for it. But yeah, I've definitely reached points where I've taken on too many things which aren't aligned, and I think over the years I've been able to let go of the things that don't serve me and align the projects that I'm working on now so they can transferable skills and transferable contacts and creativity. And yeah, it's a process though.
Because I know that purpose and impact is so important to you, and you're currently running 2 of your own businesses. What are the practices that you've brought into your own life to be able to, I suppose, show up as your best self and fulfill your potential in these businesses?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about surrounding yourself with good people, delegating to really good people. I read a quote recently. Elon Musk said, I don't have an aerospace degree, but I speak to a lot of smart people, and I've got some really smart people on my team. And nice. Sometimes, that's a really good point, is aligning yourself with good people, being able to delegate, being able to get people to get around the vision, and then they want to drive it themselves, and then it's not always you pulling the cart, it's kind of being pushed. So I think that's really important. Yeah, I don't know, it's a tricky one. I think for me, obviously my personal routine is important as well. Having, good habits. Even right now we're in lockdown for 300 days or whatever it is, but the ability to still maintain your routines and eat healthy and get enough sleep and get outside and get into the ocean or into nature and meditate and have your fitness. And sometimes you have to be creative with how you execute that. But I think it's really important just to treat yourself like a kid sometimes and make sure you get enough sleep and the right food and you have those positive routines. So I think that stuff is almost like the foundation to be able to show up as your best self. And then, yeah, surrounding yourself with the right kind of people. And I think it's a natural, it flows from loving what you do as well. If you are passionate about it and you can find something that you have a vision and a love and a passion for, then I think naturally you're going to show up as a pretty good version of yourself. But some of the time, not all the time, but yeah.
And I know that minimum standards are important to you. What are some specifics in your own life? I know that you obviously mentioned like you go swimming and you're in nature and your meditation. Out of all of those, are there like any really specific non-negotiables that you have in your life?
Yeah, I have this little book actually somewhere around here. It's like my daily routine. So every day I put in the main things that I'm going to achieve, work out, do some kind of exercise, fitness, even if it's just going for a walk or a jog. It changes though. It's never like a set thing that I do long term, but I literally write on my book, I want to go, for the next month, for the next 2 months, I need to get into nature 3 or 4 times a week.
Nice.
That's it. I need to work out 4 times a week. I need to do some kind of exercise, you can literally get really granular with it. And I think sometimes it helps. You don't always hit it. You don't have to exactly stick to it. Have meditate every single day. That's a minimum standard for me. Meditation doesn't just mean sitting down for 30 minutes, or last night I did a group breathwork session. Today I just sat in the cold water at the ocean for a couple of minutes. It could just be having a coffee, but it's just mindfulness. But having that moment every single day is really important. And just, creating those minimum standards, making sure that they're realistic and achievable, and committing to them and actually just following through, I think is really important, because you don't get your shoulds, you get your musts. And if you have to do that thing and you're like, that's it, this week I will work out, or I will get outside of the house, especially in this, the current situation. Sometimes you don't leave your house and you're like, oh, I've just been working and doing Zoom meetings. And so just having that, I'm going to go for a walk around the block. I'm going to walk to get a coffee instead of making one. Just creating those simple habits and stacking those habits is really important. But it always changes. There's no kind of hard and fast rule. Something might be a bit more important or a focus at one time or another. I set standards around writing. Like I've just finished my first book, which is super exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so that's
huge.
Yeah, it was a long time coming. I actually wrote, it's just been chipping away, and then kind of this period now, it's given me some time to really finally get it finished. But with that, I literally had to set myself, and I would put it in my diary X amount of times a week. I'm just going to sit down and work on it. So yeah, I think minimum standards, making sure they're realistic is the big part. And accountability is good as well. I have a coach myself, a business coach. I speak to my team and we kind of keep each other accountable. We've all got these little books. I think that's a good part of it as well.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned mindfulness, because I feel like it's one of the easier ones with the most profound impact, certainly in my life. And, I think that sometimes we can make the mistake of thinking, as you sort of said, we have to do like half an hour of like mindfulness and meditation in the morning. And it's just like, it's too overwhelming for people and they had this negative relationship with it. And sort of what I've learned is like, it's good to have these sort of set things that you may be able to do of like a morning or evening, but even just throughout the day, as you're saying, when you go to walk to get your cup of coffee, just to kind of be intentional about being present in that couple of minutes. And I've certainly found in my own life, being present, even for just like an extra couple of minutes a day, is like life changing. Like I feel like I'm in so much more flow, so much like I'm much more calm. I'm much more focused on the right things. I'm much more energetic. Because I'm not sure what your experience is, Scott, but I have found like there seems to be a lot of people out there that tend to have like a not negative connotation when it comes to practicing mindfulness and meditation. And some people, in fact, find it more stressful doing it than not.
Yeah, I think exactly. And sometimes if we that's why there need to be these realistic expectations and realistic minimum standards. Because if we say, I've never jogged in my life, but I need to do a marathon by next month, you're probably not going to get there. You're then going to might feel guilty about it. You create a negative association with it, and then you put it in the too hard basket, and then that stacks on itself. And it's exactly the same with that. So if you can create a really simple doorway into doing it as a practice, or finding something that works for you, then it's so much more realistic for it to last long term. And I think that's so for you. Would you say, do you do the walks to get the coffee, or what's your kind of mindfulness approach?
Well, I do a practice of like meditation / mindfulness every morning as soon as I wake up. And, this is an interesting thing that I've just sort of been learning through COVID, is like trying to find a sense of certainty in all of this uncertainty. So what I will do is I'll wake up and I'll consciously go straight to the sun, like whether it's where I live and I can see it, or I'll go down to the beach and I will meditate to the sun. And that is where I find my certainty. And it's like, it may sound a little weird, but I'm like, the sun is like my friend now, because I can depend that it rises every morning, and I'll go down, and it's kind of my anchor for finding presence within myself and connection with myself, but also the world. So I do use that, and I'm pretty good with that. But throughout the day, I've sort of noticed, if I'm not doing even a minute of that throughout the day, I'm feeling a lot more stressful by the end of the day, and not necessarily like a healthy tired, but a more exhausted tired. So I've been trying to implement, if I'm just sort of sitting on the couch, instead of like reaching for the phone, which you so naturally do if you've got nothing else to do, I will just sit and I will just be. And I would just sort of become aware of what's going on in my mind and sort of just come back to my center. And doing that throughout the day has actually become fun and rewarding. Like I kind of enjoy the spontaneity of it sort of popping up in my head, like, oh, now's a great time to sort of reconnect with yourself. So yeah, I would say I have a set plan for the morning, but I'm trying to branch that out throughout the day. And I also do that with gratitude as well. We can have gratitude journals that we may write in of a morning or night, but I think it's really important to be able to live from that space. So it's like live from the mindful space and live from that gratitude space as much as we can.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And it is all about having those little anchors and things that pull you into doing the habit. I've got a friend, he literally sets 4 alarms a day. To me, it sounds like painful, but he sets 4 alarms today, and then it just says be present. It's just, imagine this alarm like ringing at you, and so he stops.
Alarms make me anxious. I don't know how.
Me too. But everyone's different. That's the thing. So for him, he's like, no, man, it works. Like I just bang, and then it reminds me. Otherwise, I forget, and it gets to like 6 p.m. I haven't done anything. And I think that's also a really good point with the certainty, because certain people are more inclined to need as a really core value for them. Certainty is more important than others. And for me, my life, I haven't had, so it's been complete variety for so many years, moving around and doing this and different opportunities, and my phone could ring and then I end up in China a few weeks later. It's just, so I've kind of gotten used to that, but everyone's different. And I've got friends and family members who rely on that consistency and that certainty. And so if it gets taken away, you can feel powerless. And that's a really good way to bring that back, is to think, what is within my control? What is something that I can create, that I do have, you can give me that certainty and consistency. And whether it's the sun, or whether it's you're going for a jog or doing this or doing whatever that might be, you just create that routine and habit. I think that's such a good point.
I love that you've brought up the needs of certainty, uncertainty, because I'm assuming you're referring to Tony Robbins' 6 human needs when you say that. And I also
I've done
value
the firewalks. I've done the
Have you? You're a hardcore fan.
They were one of my clients for a number of years. So we did videos for
Right.
them. And so I was lucky enough. I brought some of my team along and we went to a few of the events and walked on the fire. And it was, yeah. So I was really lucky to do that a number of times. And I think, yeah, there's things you take away. It's like, I like to look at it like the Bruce Lee mentality. He had all these different masters, but he didn't fully, look at anyone as his doctrine. He just took the things that worked for him and the things that resonated with him and created his own kind of approach. And I think that's the best way. You don't need a guru or this is the only method, only the Wim Hof method. All I do is cold and breath work, nothing else. That's the only thing that fixes everything. I don't agree with that. I love elements of it, but it's not about the absolutes.
I love that you brought that up because I feel like, we're both passionate about self-development. And I know in my own experience, I got slightly lost in that for a while because I was such a curious person that I was reading all these different things. And like one minute I would be like over here and then the next minute I'd be over there. And I'm like, I'm not actually sure what I believe and who I back and like what is going on. And I feel like I've kind of like recentered myself now and just being really intuitive about it. Like you're saying, I'm like, you know what, like that works for me in my own life. And I'm going to take like a little bit of that. I might not have to take the whole thing, but it's been a lot more rewarding. And I think it's very empowering for people to understand that like what may work for me or you may not work for other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. The idea is reconnecting with yourself and your intuition in the sense of knowing what works for you. And I love that you brought up this idea of variety because I can certainly relate to you. I was a massive traveler before COVID happened. COVID's been really amazing for me in that sense that I've kind of experienced a life that I'm not used to. And that's been a lot of growth in that. How have you dealt with valuing variety in your life, but not being able to do it like in the way that you would normally fulfill it outside of COVID?
Just drinking lots of wine.
I was going to say, this is meant to be an empowering, empowering answer, isn't it? Drinking wine, smoking promiscuous sex.
No, I think, again, it's very similar for me. It's actually been a really good process that's forced me to put the brakes on a little bit, which has allowed me to plant some more roots and to focus on growth. And I would say my software business, Euda, which is it's a wellbeing software. It's used by coaches and self-development. It would never have got to where it is if I didn't have this kind of forceful removal of my my variety, because I think that was, it's amazing. And it also helped with a lot of my work and traveling and adventures and here and there and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's actually been really good to be able to just stay and focus and not have all these shiny objects and distractions. And so for me, I've just really thrown myself into my work and just growing the businesses and creative projects, working on different projects like the book and my master's thesis. And I think, yeah, really, I've just thrown a lot of different projects and then just getting into nature a lot and going within a bit more, because I did realize for a long time I was doing that. I was looking to the external for that fulfillment piece. Oh, the next adventure, when's my next thing? It's like the next hit. You're like a junkie. What's the next cool thing I can do? Meeting these amazing people and doing this show and that and this thing. And I think, yeah, having the awareness of it can be an addiction and it can, that's not where you'll find peace. So yeah, realizing that you don't have to live with that value. It can be a driving value for a long time, but it doesn't have to always be. And there's good and there's bad in it. So
yeah, I definitely agree and can certainly resonate with that. I remember, I traveled to almost 50 countries seeking something that, as you said, is already within me now. So, I totally understand that. And I think, even throughout COVID lockdowns, it's been popping up slightly, but I'm really grateful to be aware now. And, I would say this to the listeners as well, is for any of, you that are more variety inclined, that sort of like to be out and about doing lots of things or traveling and experiencing different things and don't necessarily have those opportunities right now, you may not be feeling great in sort of this stagnant lack of momentum kind of space. And I would really encourage you to figure out a way that you can bring more variety into your life. It's going to be in a different form, but to make sure it is in an empowering way, because what, you know, in my own life, and I've certainly seen in others' lives, when you don't meet that need, you're going to start seeking it in things like alcohol or drugs or, you know, video games or sex, like all these different outlets that, you know, aren't necessarily good for you. So it's about kind of addressing what it is that you're getting from those things and trying to get them from other places that may be helping you to grow and self-develop during this time.
Exactly. It's the same with habits as well. Like there's you know, the pyramid, the thoughts lead to the emotion leads to the action. And if that action is not a positive or supportive action, that's how, you know, I feel, you know, thoughts, oh, I hate my work, this sucks, da, 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 start feeling down. What's my action that will lead to? I'll have more chocolate, or I'll have another glass of wine or whatever. So it's just, if you can be aware of that pattern and you can change the action, oh, my job's annoying, this sucks, whatever. Oh, I feel a bit down, I'll go for a walk. Like and it's the same with this variety. And even the other day I was with my brother and I was talking about, oh yeah, it'd be cool, you know, I just want to have an adventure again, da 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 da. And then he goes, oh, and I was looking at all these different dive sites, because I used to do a lot of scuba diving. I did a show about diving all around the world. And so I was like, oh, I'd love to do that. Oh, I missed that, blah, blah, blah. And then he just pulls up the most amazing, it's called the Cathedral in Bondi. And it's in North Bondi, and it's just this beautiful underwater cathedral that you can scuba dive through. And he's like, oh, have you seen this before? I was like, no. And that's literally in my little bubble. I could go there tomorrow and go scuba diving. And it's like, wow, okay. Or I could go paddleboarding, or I could there's things within the limitations of this, and whether we're in lockdown or not, that we don't even realize that we overlook. And sometimes we're just, oh, well, we'd love to be able to go and do a dive. It's like, well, here's the most beautiful dive in the world. Go do it. It's like, sometimes we just say it for the sake of it. It's not, but when you actually take a step back, you can find a way to meet those needs right now with what you have.
It's so true. Like, I feel like to an extent, you know, we've been conditioned. It's sort of like, you know, when I would travel overseas, I would be like, oh, it's like a sense of freedom that I've never felt before, and the human connection that I get. But it's like, but why am I not experiencing that in my day-to-day here in Australia? And I sometimes do this practice on myself when I'm feeling not as grateful where I am. I'll pretend I'm in another country, and it's so fascinating how my perspective of everything immediately changes, and I'm so much more present. I'm so much more interested in everything around me. And it's really weird how we put on those blinders when we come home.
And we're like, oh, like photography is a really good example of that. It kind of, as soon as you're taking photos, even if it's in your backyard, you're automatically more aware. And it is a form of mindfulness. And you're actually, oh, I just glance over this stuff, but this is really nice. And it's the same with the travel. You chat more to people. You're like, oh, I'm traveling, so I'm going to speak to people at a cafe. But then it's your local one. You're like, oh, I'm going to speak to you. Like, so for sure. And I think that's something that we can do every day. And that's a really cool little practice. I like it.
Yeah, it definitely works.
And it just shows that it is all about it's your perspective. You create the reality, you attribute the meaning to that reality. It's what the perspective that you give it, that's what meaning it has. Right now I could be traveling. Like what's the difference? Who knows? It's just the reality, but it's how you perceive it and how you enact with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts create things. Mm-hmm. So you've spoken about nature a lot, and it's something that is very important in my life when it comes to my mental health and my perspective. What is your relationship with nature? Why is it something that you feel like is really important in your life?
Yeah, I grew up on the Gold Coast, the beach. My mum was a pro surfer before it was even really a thing. And I think the beach was always a big part of my life. And as kids, we would just get into nature and get in and build things in the backyard and all that kind of stuff. And for me, that was always really nice. And then as I got older and I lived in big cities, I kind of lost that for a long time. And I stopped getting into nature, and I stopped even just going to the ocean as much. And I think only over the last few years, I've really reconnected with that. And I've just realized that there's so much freedom in nature. There's no better feeling. It's a reset than when you dive in the ocean and then you get out again. You can't get that anywhere else. And so just realizing that it's a tool and it's something that's there for us, and it's just this beautiful playground, and it just helps you feel so much better. And then it's also connection. I think I did this a nature retreat. A friend of mine kind of pulled me along. It was in Mullumbimby. And this
Nice.
was it was near your where you grew up, I think.
Where I grew up, yeah.
There you go. You probably knew them. And and so I went along, and I was kind of, somewhat open-minded, and it was just such a beautiful experience. And they have it's a lot of their approach is based on Native American modalities, and there was just so many beautiful lessons and their idea of connection to nature and spirituality, and how nature is the gateway to consciousness and all of that kind of stuff, I think is just really beautiful. So I took a lot away from that. There was things, again, where I was like, I'm probably not at that level of, your realization. But I think that was a nice reminder for me as well. We did like this nature quest, and it started absolutely pouring with rain. And I was just standing in this bush, and the idea is, again, it's mindful awareness and connecting with nature. And there was definitely a moment where I was like, what on earth am I doing here? But then when you kind of let that go, I felt so at peace, and it does give you that sense of connection and freedom.
Freedom. I always feel that when I go for a run in the rain, I always feel like this is what freedom feels like. There's something so beautiful about that. So in relation to nature and spirituality, you've studied psychology. How do you what is the relationship between the two in your life?
Yeah, I think I would say spirituality came first for me, in terms of my dad was a bit of a hippie growing up. He took me to yoga and gave me crystals and made me read The Secret. And this was like as a little kid. And I was meditating. And so I kind of was exposed to a lot of these ideas really young. And then that kind of became martial arts, and I was doing martial arts. And there's a lot of Buddhism and things in Muay Thai and these practices. And so I was kind of exploring that. And then I always had a passion for self-development. And I worked with a really good coach once, and it kind of inspired me. I wanted to help people. So I went back to uni, did psychology. And I think really a lot of what I realized through doing psychology is a lot of modern psychology and positive psychology is basically just putting ancient concepts under the lens of science, so to speak, and just a lot of studies and research, and then comparing that with, so for example, mindfulness. It's been around for however long, it's the oldest practice. Yoga, the oldest practice. So these things were already an idea, but a lot of psychology has actually just looked at that, done studies around the impacts of mindfulness, from a neuroscience perspective, the impact it has on gray matter in the brain, the, parasympathetic nervous system, and all of this kind of stuff. So I think a big part of it for me has just been a confirmation that a lot of these practices and ideas are, in a sense, validated through science, but again, not, so that for me is really nice. And then also there's been studies that have shown that having some kind of connection to something bigger than yourself, whether that be spirituality or religion or nature, actually has a direct impact on your well-being. And it's a positive indicator of subjective well-being. So I think in that sense, it's great as well. And then, my thesis that I'm writing right now. So I did psychology years ago. And then again, this is another lockdown thing. I've decided to go back and get my master's. And so I'm nearly finished my thesis, and it's all about the neurological impacts of eudaimonic well-being. And so eudaimonic well-being is, hedonic is, the feel-good things, chocolate and pleasure and all that kind of stuff. Eudaimonic is meaning, purpose, a sense of connection, spirituality, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm actually looking at the impact that increasing eudaimonic well-being has from a neuroscience perspective, what impact that has on the brain. And so there's not a lot of studies out there, but there are some that are showing, similar to the mindfulness approach, that it does have impacts, gray matter increasing, things like that, that actually support cognitive function and help us. So it's cool. I think for me, it's just a confirmation and a validation, and I love how it can correlate and intersect.
And what made you choose that as the topic for your thesis? As you said, you've decided to do your master's in COVID. Was it something within this experience that fueled that decision, or is it sort of been building up over the years?
Yeah, I've been meaning to get the master's for a long time, because I've done all the other things. I just needed to do the thesis. So it's kind of been sitting there now. I've got a bit of space. I was like, let's do it. In terms of the topic itself, for me, I do like the idea of meaning, start with why, these kind of concepts. And I wanted to see, but then I also love neuroscience, and I'm a bit of a science nerd in that sense, actually looking at the impacts. And Dr. Andrew Huberman from the neuroscience Stanford lab is incredible. If you haven't seen his stuff, it's really cool. And that absolute fascinated with that intersection of science and psychology. So I just wanted to put them both together. And then my startup is called Euda, which is quite relevant. So I was like, let's look into this.
I was thinking that's really cool. What a good idea.
So it all kind of intersects, and I mean, I just find it fascinating. The idea that purpose and increasing a sense of purpose. There are studies that are shown with Alzheimer's patients, and the simple comparison of the patients who have an increased purpose in life, which could be derived from some kind of charity or a creative project or a work, whatever that might be, actually reduces the effects, the impacts of Alzheimer on their lives, increases their cognitive function. And that's really fascinating.
It totally makes sense, doesn't it? When you think about it, like just existing, like it's not growth orientated, is it? Like, as you know, Tony Robbins says, like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I feel like it is that sense of purpose that really fuels you to grow.
Yeah, exactly. Having something bigger than yourself, whether it's contribution or just your creativity, going into that experience of flow, some kind of purpose, some kind of experience of why we're here. I think that's really important.
And what has it been like being involved in creating a startup? Because, this is a pretty challenging thing to lean into, particularly when you have another business. What's that been like?
It's been a roller coaster, but I've learned so much. Like, I've got this awesome team. Basically, we started this software a couple of years ago. And now we're really leaning into the space of helping the helper. So helping wellbeing companies and coaches by giving them a framework and a software to use to support their clients. And so I'm having conversations, like this with these amazing people who are helping people and psychologists. And so that's really beautiful. I love that element of it. I've got some really talented people on my team. One of my business partners is a really tech expert, and the other one's got a HR kind of background. And then we've built this small team. So and I think it's been really nice to see, especially when we were very first starting, how much people believe in the vision and they want to get involved and they love it. And they're like, oh, this is cool. And people, I don't know, it's like giving people a cause to get behind and to support and to grow. And I think that's been a really cool approach to starting a business. And then my other business, it has actually been a bit of a blessing because we do production and consulting. And so there's been a lot where Mead has actually helped the startup, like the little brother, kind of get off the ground. So, and then, again, just kind of finding the way that it can relate. I'm doing more speaking opportunities and looking at creating a show, documentaries, all that kind of stuff, and seeing how that can work in with the startup and the software and help the marketing. So trying to find a way that they can all kind of coexist and support each other has been really exciting. But it's been hard as well. There's been moments where I've just said, nah, I'm going to give it up. This is not worth it. Because especially when I've got this other business, which is great, and it's the vehicle and it's going well and it's growing. And so to take the focus away from that there's definitely been moments where I've thought, maybe it's not worth it, but then I've pushed through that and realigned with the vision, and then it's just growing slowly, steadily, and it's just a really nice startup side hustle kind of business.
So what do you think are the most important things to pull on? By the sounds of it, it sounds like having consistency and a vision is really important, because I think, many people are sort of getting to this point of really thinking about becoming an entrepreneur and having more control in their own lives. And a lot of people, are very orientated towards financial freedom, but it's difficult. Like, you have to really have, to my understanding, a really deep understanding of your why and stay committed to that. What do you think in those moments where it's gotten really tough for you? Like, what are the thoughts that are happening? What is your perspective during that time that has really got you to push through and keep going?
With entrepreneurship, a lot of people think that they have to go all in. It's all or nothing. I have to quit my job. I have to sell my house. I have to live in a van in order to launch a startup. But you can start small and scale up. You can test the waters and see what you're interested in. And for me, when I first started the production company, I was working full time at Channel 10, hosting, producing. And then I started getting some of my own clients, scale back to part-time, started growing more and more, and then eventually just made the leap. But I didn't do it. It wasn't a clean cut. It was a slow process of, transitioning and growing and testing the waters. And there's been other businesses we've launched over the years in a similar kind of approach. But I think, you really just have to back yourself, take a risk, and also just think, why not? Why not? What's the worst thing that could happen? For a lot of us, if we do take that risk, the worst situation isn't that bad. We're going to, there's support for us if we really need it. There's a job still waiting for us if we need it. And so some of us, so I think you can kind of back yourself and trust yourself. Obviously, it's not the same for everyone, and it's really hard. And a lot of people might have responsibilities and expectations and so many things on their shoulders, but you can always start and take a step in that direction, even if it's a small one. And even if it's, on the side or at night, just back yourself and put some time into realizing what you want to do and what you are passionate about, and then finding obviously a good market fit and just having a lot of conversations. I think for us, the vision that I initially had is very different to the current product, but it's changed just from conversations with experts and people in the space and identifying what that need is and where that gap sits. What is it what do you actually want? What are you missing as the market that you don't have right now, and how can we solve that problem? And so it's kind of changed and adapted to better fit that gap. So and I think for me as well, I remember I had a full-time job once, production kind of thing, and there was this whole process where I'd been approved leave and I was meant to go overseas traveling with my friend, and I was going to visit my sick grandma. It's like a movie. And it was approved and I was going to go, and I booked the trip, and then I got a new boss, and the boss said, no, sorry, you can't have that leave anymore. And I was just baffled. And I was like, but you can't, but I'm approved. I want to go. And I didn't go, and I couldn't go, and I never said goodbye to my grandma. And that was, it was painful and it was hard. And I think that was the last full-time job that I ever had, because I said, I want to live life on my terms, and I want to be able to have that freedom and that ability to, but obviously that's, quite a toxic culture in itself, and you can have an amazing job and you can still find that in a job. It's not to say that you have to, but for me, that was my path, and that's what I've done for a lot of years now, and I can't see myself going back. And I think, like with anything, the more you do it, the more confidence you get. It builds momentum. You get one small win and, this is great. I could keep going with this. I could keep going with this. And then they kind of stack and build, and that adds to the confidence. I bought this painting off a friend of mine the other week. He's just decided he wants to be an artist, and but he's going through that same process where he's doubting himself and puts it out there, but he doesn't know. And so, a win like that will give you that confidence. Oh, okay, this is validation. This is, that I am taking a step in the right direction. And I think they stack up, and over time you kind of learn to back yourself more. So, but if you don't put yourself out there, you'll never get to that point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And in terms of vision, because obviously, as you said, like you had, and I'm sorry for this, you had a really painful experience that kind of drove you to want to live life on your terms. Now that you're running your own businesses, obviously the vision is expanding. Do you have like an all-encompassing vision for what you want to do in this life, or do you kind of compartmentalize it for each business?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, they're all aligned in the one same direction, having a positive impact, helping people flourish, you know, having a creative expression and growing myself throughout the process. I think it all aligns to that. And I think it's taken me a long time to get here. But whether it's speaking, TV hosting, production business, software, it's all aligned towards that direction. And I think that's exciting. And, you know, who knows what will happen in the next 5 or 10 years, but I'm just going to keep growing that. And then as that expands and grows, it leads to new opportunities and new things. And yeah, just kind of following the bouncing ball, essentially.
And I saw on your social media that last year was, to an extent, quite a stressful year. And, you know, there's no surprise. Things were very different for all of us. And you said that you wanted to more embrace going with the flow this year. How is that working for you?
Yeah, I think going with the flow is always, finding flow in your life is great, the concept of flow itself, but then also just going with the flow and not taking things too seriously. I think this is something that I learned from, I had inevitably had that when I was full-time TV hosting and doing all these, you know, fun shows and doing all these silly things. But then I think for a while there, I kind of thought that in order to do business, you have to be this serious business person and you have to, you know, wear that mask sort of thing. So I think that was when that was through that period, it was stress. I was creating the stress and I was living in that, and I was working really hard and, oh, but you've got to hustle to get it done and you've got to, you know, this is natural. But then I kind of realized that you can still work hard and you can still achieve your goals, but you can do it without that tension and without that. You can have fun throughout the process and have, you know, play and take time off and go to the beach and whatever that looks like for you. So I think that realization was good for me. And regardless of, it's, you know, I mean, this year's still been hard with the lockdowns and everything else. We've lost a lot of work. There's been a lot of things we've had to change, but I would say that I'm going with the flow more, more so than, and I would attribute it to that realization, to the fact that you don't have to hustle, and hustling, you know, burnout is not a badge of honor. It's not something to admire, to work yourself, you know, 12-hour days and be super tired. And it's not, you can still achieve those results, but throughout the process, enjoy the process, because the process is your life. So that's a really big realization that we constantly have to keep reminding ourselves.
Yeah, because I heard you say that your friend even pulled you up and informed you that they thought that you had been a little too serious. And I really loved
so
that.
Serious lately. I was like, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I really loved that because, you know, it's a reminder, because I definitely feel like, particularly when you're getting into entrepreneurship and you're finding your feet, you're understanding what the mask is that you have to wear, and if you have to wear one, you know, you can be quite self-orientated in that experience, because you're really, as you're saying, like, you're putting a lot of effort into trying to achieve things, and there is this seriousness about it, and you tend to forget how that affects the people around you.
Yeah, exactly. The people around you, yourself, you know, people want to be around you when you're not wearing a mask and you are being yourself. And, you know, not to say that you can't be serious sometimes or you can't be grumpy sometimes, but I think, yeah, really separating the two and thinking, you know, I'm going to show up as myself and try and be as authentic as possible, the ups and downs and all, while going towards what I want, but I don't have to become something in order to achieve that.
Yeah, I think that's so incredibly powerful. And I think it's such an easy thing to fall into, is to take it so seriously and to be pushing yourself through all of this. And I feel like life just passes by. And, those are the stories that you hear, right? Of like, very successful people getting to the, quote unquote end of their lives and being like, oh no, I wish I slowed down and I wish I was more present and I wish I laughed more or played more or was more creative.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think we're lucky that we are exposed with now on obviously social media, and obviously books have always been there, but we are exposed to these stories and these lessons so much now that it is a constant reminder, and we can go, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. I would rather actually have that realization now and learn from their experiences versus going through it myself. And so it's just that reflection process. And to an extent, slowing down and removing the variety and the constant, distractions allows you to have more of that awareness as well. So it's good just to take a step back and have a think about, how that relates to your life. What could you do right now to find more flow, or to, be slower and not be rushing towards some kind of ever-moving goalpost.
And to understand, I think that, pushing through and being serious isn't always the most effective and efficient way. I think, in our society, we've kind of been conditioned that like work hard equals better results. And, I don't always see that. And I think sometimes a sense of calmness can give you more focus and clarity to truly work on what is important versus just being busy and just kind of fluffing around doing things and getting, results. But I honestly think when you come from that sense of more flow, you certainly achieve more and effectively.
Exactly. And learn to delegate, learn that it's okay, releasing some of that control, that it's not done right unless you're doing it yourself. Like trusting people and backing people. I think that's an important element as well.
Yeah, that's certainly very difficult. I think that's one of the more difficult things about entrepreneurship is particularly when you're starting out, you're so self-reliant and, sometimes you really do have to be a master of many trades. And as you begin to develop, obviously you have to start delegating these things, and it can be quite challenging for a lot of people to be able to hand over that, sense of power or authority to people and depend on them. But it sounds like you've truly got that covered in your life, which I think is a really valuable skill set to have.
Yeah, sometimes I definitely still just go, oh, I could have done, oh, no. And then, but you just have to kind of stop yourself and go, no, actually, by giving them that control and trust as well, then they step up to the plate, I think, a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, which I think is really nice.
So for the rest of the year, obviously you've got big things coming. You're finishing your thesis. You've finished your book. So what's the plan in relation to these parts of your life?
Finish the thesis, which still feels a long way off, but I don't have a lot of
You're
time.
You're currently in the mad scientist.
Oh yeah, I'm a proper mad scientist.
Yeah.
I sit there. Last night I went through 400 different research papers with a glass of wine, just like frantically reading the abstracts, because you have to kind of
here we are talking about flow and calmness.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
400 papers.
Yeah, just smashing through them. But it's kind of cool. And then every now and then I would stop on one that just really interests me, and I'd be like, "Whoa, that's cool! Someone's done this experiment. It's really cool." Wow. So yeah, I think really just finishing them. Having a holiday. I haven't had a holiday for a while. I think that'll be nice once, all of this relaxes a bit. I will have a bit of a holiday, whether it's home or abroad, just take some time off and then just keep chipping away onto the next one. I think I actually missed the process. I sent the book off to my agent and I feel like I've lost a part of me. I'm like, I missed that. The writing, the flow, the creativity. So I think I will definitely. It doesn't feel like work. Sometimes it does, the editing stuff, but it doesn't feel like work for me. So I think I'll definitely start another one. And yeah.
And can you share anything in relation to the book, what it's about?
Not really yet. I've got I actually don't know.
Can you share if it's fiction or nonfiction?
It's creative nonfiction.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful. So some personal stories, with a bit of science. I think that's all I can say for now. Yeah, but it's exciting. I think it'll be exciting to get it out there and see what people think, and hopefully, yeah, spark some conversations and share some of my ridiculous stories and situations I've ended up in over the years.
Yeah, I feel like that's quite cool actually, coming to like finish that book. So you've obviously been writing during COVID. It sounds like a pretty cool process to kind of reflect on your like varied experiences over the time whilst being in lockdown.
Yeah, I've just been virtually giving myself these spikes of excitement. I'm like, oh, I did
Vicariously
that.
through your past.
Yeah. And I'm writing these things. I'm like, whoa, that actually happened. That's what. And now I just wear my dressing gown. No, it's just, it's funny. It's been a nice process, but I'm excited to make some more stories, and then write about them. But a big part of it is also the science. So, it does blend across with the thesis and that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, it sounds like a beautiful combination. I'm certainly excited to read it. So thank you for this wonderful conversation, Scott. I really, really appreciate connecting with you and you sharing all the wonderful things that are happening in your life.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been beautiful. And I think, yeah, it's such a great concept and idea. And the more we can get these kind of ideas and thoughts out there, hopefully they can spark some brainwaves and some actions and some, yeah.
All the neuroscience of it. I'm just picturing you with like an image of the brain in the head.
Yeah, I love it. So good. Just get super nerdy with it.
Yeah.
I want to buy a lab coat.
You should. You can replace the dressing gown with a lab coat.
Yes. That's
then you're truly being character. So Scott, again, thank you so much. And on a final note, I would love to ask you, what does it mean to you, Scott, to be human?
I think to be human, it's an opportunity to experience conscious awareness. It's the whole idea of I think, therefore I am. It's an experience and it's an opportunity for us to experience the whole life, contribution, fulfillment, meaning, love. It's swimming in the ocean this morning. It's experiencing and exploring this awareness, this conscious awareness. And it's an opportunity as well to create life because you are the creator. It's that I am the creator, and you can attach whatever meaning you want to that life. So I think it's an opportunity to experience and to grow and then to give back.